Mr. Falk, would I be accurate if I described your relationship with Mrs. Cole as totally...
Jim Carrey. A man whose face could twist in ways that defy the limits of human expression. A man whose energy could light up an entire theater. For decades, he made the world laugh. Wild, unforgettable characters, explosive comedy, he seemed unstoppable. But behind that bright smile, behind the manic energy, lay a secret struggle few could see. What if the very energy that brought him fame was also a mask hiding a lifelong battle with despair and emotional pain? At 61, Jim Carrey has finally shared the raw truth about his darkest moments, his father's tragedy, his own breaking points, and the heavy toll of the life behind the laughter. This isn't just the story of a comedian. This is a story of survival. A story about the complexity hiding behind every laugh we've ever heard. Behind Jim Carrey's explosive energy and elastic comedic persona, a quieter suffering lived in the shadows. In a candid 2025 interview, he revealed that he had battled persistent, low-level despair since the 1980s, decades of emotional struggle quietly managed with Prozac. This revelation shattered the illusion audiences had of Carrey as an untouchable force of joy. The man who made millions laugh was often fighting to stay afloat. The divide between Jim's public image and private struggles was vast. His frenetic enthusiasm, his fearless physical comedy, hid anxiety, addiction, and emotional exhaustion. Jim once described himself as a manic-depressive clown, performing happiness while unraveling internally. And these struggles weren't random. They were rooted deep in his early life, shaped by instability and trauma, including the haunting shadow of his father's suicide attempts. What followed was not a single crisis but a lifetime journey through depression, substance use, and the crushing pressures of fame. His resilience kept him moving forward, but the cost was profound. Jim Carrey's story begins in Newmarket, Ontario. The youngest of 4 children, he grew up in a household marked by financial struggle and emotional hardship. His father, Percy, once a jazz saxophonist, had traded music for an accounting job paying just $8,000 a year. Meanwhile, his mother, Kathleen, battled chronic illness, often confined to bed. By the time Jim was 13, the family faced total upheaval. The closure of Titan Wheels, where Percy worked, threw them into poverty. Percy's repeated rejections forced him into a janitorial job, earning just $4 an hour. Soon, the family lost their home, spending 2 bitter years in a cramped yellow Volkswagen camper van parked near Lake Ontario. Nights were freezing. Comforts were scarce. Children slept in tents beside the van, washing in gas station sinks during the day. This period exposed Jim to severe adversity. He scavenged discarded sandwiches to eat, worked night shifts cleaning floors alongside his parents, and struggled to keep up in high school. Kathleen's worsening health and addiction to painkillers added emotional weight. But in the chaos, Jim found refuge. Humor became survival. At school, he earned the nickname Rubber Face for his ability to mimic, impersonate, and contort. His comedy wasn't just entertainment, it was armor against bullying, poverty, and emotional strain. While peers mocked his worn clothes and homemade jokes, Jim honed his craft, unknowingly laying the foundation for a career built on laughter born from pain. Even as the family fractured, siblings scattering and his father sinking deeper into depression, Jim continued performing, convinced that laughter could save him, even if only for a moment. Comedy, for Jim Carrey, was never just a career choice. It was a lifeline. From a young age, he discovered that twisting his face into absurd expressions, experimenting with voices, and performing wild characters gave him control in an otherwise uncontrollable world. Hours in front of mirrors became exercises in survival, crafting a persona that could both entertain and shield. His first real stage experience came at 15, when his father drove him to Toronto's Yuck Yucks Comedy Club. Dressed in a bright leisure suit chosen by his mother, Jim's initial act bombed. But instead of discouragement, he received quiet pride from his father, which fueled his determination. Failure became a training ground. Comedy gave him a voice when words failed to capture his inner turmoil. It provided structure in chaos and power in a world where school and peers often humiliated him. Multiple failed auditions, including for Saturday Night Live, only pushed him to refine a unique style. His exaggerated characters revealed his imagination and authenticity, setting him apart. But laughter was also armor. Jim admitted to moments when pain pushed him towards self-harm, desperate to feel something real. The chaotic gestures, elastic faces, and wild antics weren't just entertainment, they were manifestations of a fragile, complex emotional life. Comedy became survival, performance became therapy, and the stage became a sanctuary. By 1990, Jim Carrey's talent exploded onto the national stage within living color. Over 5 seasons, he created over 120 sketches, inventing unforgettable characters like Fire Marshal Bill. Yet behind the scenes, the physical and emotional toll was immense. Jim contorted, slapped, injured, and exhausted himself for every laugh. He gained and lost 20 pounds repeatedly, endured twisted ankles, and survived grueling 80-hour workweeks. Stimulants like Adderall became necessary just to stay awake. Meanwhile, his personal life faltered. His marriage to Melissa Wolmer suffered under the pressures of fame, exhaustion, and temptation, ending in 1995. Court documents painted a man at odds with himself, publicly heroic, privately fractured. Even as Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, made him a star in 1994, the demands of performance blurred reality. Jim lived in the character's apartment, improvising up to 40% of his lines, sometimes confusing the crew, sometimes risking his health. Success brought financial reward, fame, and merchandising, but little relief from inner turmoil. During the promotion of Dumb and Dumber, he suffered a severe nervous breakdown, hallucinating and relying on substances to cope. Even with millions in salary, his personal stability remained fragile. Fame did not protect him, it amplified the internal battles. The pressures continued to mount. Jim's comedic brilliance masked severe mental strain. He relied on therapy, medications like Valium, and stimulants to meet the demands of physical and emotional intensity. Long makeup sessions for films like The Mask and The Grinch burned and strained his body for hours. Broken ankles, twisted legs, and sheer exhaustion became routine. Relationships crumbled. His 1-year marriage to Lauren Holly ended due to emotional disconnect. Reports surfaced of on-set conflicts, erratic behavior, and clashes with co-stars over mood swings. Hallucinations, paranoia, and a constant need to perform led Jim to feel trapped behind multiple masks. Yet his work reflected his inner life. In The Cable Guy, he fully immersed himself in dark, obsessive roles, sometimes tormenting co-stars to capture authenticity. Legal battles over royalties and likeness added public stress. Moments like collapsing at the MTV Awards revealed the stark contrast between his public energy and private despair. As fame grew, Jim sought challenges beyond slapstick. Darker, emotionally demanding roles emerged. The Truman Show and Man on the Moon revealed vulnerability audiences hadn't seen. The Truman Show pushed him to extremes. Storm scenes required 150 takes and massive water tanks. Jim barely left the dome set, isolating himself to create authentic emotion. Man on the Moon demanded 40 pounds lost in constant immersion in Andy Kaufman's psyche, pushing co-stars to exhaustion. Even with critical acclaim, mental health suffered. Anxiety, substance reliance, and obsessive perfectionism intensified. Batman Forever and Liar Liar combined public expectation with private turmoil. The Grinch's intensive makeup left him physically and emotionally drained. Yet his commitment to art never faltered, producing performances of courage, sensitivity, and enduring impact. Recently, Jim Carrey embraced transparency. He spoke openly about decades of depression, substance use, and the long-term reliance on Prozac. Quitting medication allowed him to feel emotions fully, a move toward authenticity and healing. He explored philosophy, meditation, and painting, producing hundreds of canvases inspired by Christ consciousness, forgiveness, and compassion. Personal tragedies, like partner Catriona White's overdose, added emotional weight, yet Jim continued advocating empathy, notably through Homeboy Industries. Family shaped his healing. Daughter Jane's autism, estrangements, and his father Percy's death in 2006 marked moments of closure. Professionally, he returned for projects like Sonic the Hedgehog, balancing whimsy and depth, reflecting a search for meaningful work over mere fame. Therapy and emotional honesty became central to his life. Nearly dying from pneumonia in 2017 reshaped his relationship with medication and emotional authenticity. His willingness to confront obsession, grief, and societal tragedy demonstrated an evolving social and personal awareness, offering audiences a glimpse of the human behind the genius. Jim Carrey's legacy goes far beyond box office records and iconic characters. Beneath the laughter lies a man shaped by loneliness, depression, and a relentless search for meaning. 2 Golden Globes may shine, but his true influence reshaped comedy, blending fearless improvisation with emotional vulnerability. Understanding his life transforms his art. Wild expressions, manic energy, and absurdity carry the weight of someone who knows suffering intimately. His candidness about therapy, medication, and mental health destigmatizes struggle, inspiring others to seek help without shame. Jim's reflections on wealth and fame, declaring that riches revealed nothing fundamental, led him closer to spirituality and peace. His personal journey, marked by adversity, recovery, and compassion, continues to inform his art, relationships, and advocacy. Ultimately, Jim Carrey's story shows that even the brightest smiles can hide battles unseen. True strength emerges through vulnerability, laughter, and survival. His life is a testament to the power of humor, the weight of hardship, and the resilience of the human spirit. Jim Carrey's journey reveals the man behind the legend, the boy who became a comedic genius, and the human being navigating pain, growth, and redemption. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations into the lives behind the legends. And stay tuned, because every smile has a story, and every story deserves to be told. Jim Carrey's journey isn't just about comedy or fame, it's about understanding existence itself. Behind the humor was a man wrestling with identity, ego, and the very nature of self. In interviews, he has said, "There is no me," signaling a profound philosophical shift. Years of meditation, spiritual study, and introspection led Jim to question everything he thought he knew about himself. The mask he wore on stage, whether Ace Ventura, the Riddler, or the Grinch, was both armor and illusion. Carrey came to see that the public persona, while necessary for survival in Hollywood, was separate from his inner truth. This revelation reshaped his art. Comedy was no longer merely a survival tool, it became a lens through which he explored existential questions. Every exaggerated expression and improvisation carried layers of philosophical reflection, giving his work a depth often missed by casual audiences. In recent years, painting became Jim's sanctuary. Hundreds of canvases poured out of him, each exploring themes of forgiveness, love, and unity. Through this creative outlet, he processed decades of pain, trauma, and grief. His art reveals the emotional complexity behind the smile. While audiences saw a performer defying physical limits, behind the studio walls, Carrey was confronting inner demons, fear, anger, and sorrow. Each brushstroke was a therapeutic act, a conversation with his own psyche, a way to face feelings he had long buried under laughter and performance. Through painting, he discovered a new form of freedom. Unlike acting, which requires performance for others, visual art allowed Jim to speak solely to himself, unfiltered. It was raw, honest, and transformative, a continuation of the journey that began in that small camper van in Ontario. Family remained central to Jim's emotional evolution. His daughter Jane, diagnosed with autism, brought both challenges and profound lessons. Through parenting, Carrey confronted his own emotional limitations, learning patience, empathy, and unconditional love. The shadow of his father, Percy, also lingered. Percy's death in 2006 marked a bittersweet closure. Jim honored him with a $10 million check for the funeral, a symbolic gesture bridging a childhood of poverty to a moment of dignity. The act reflected the man Carrey had become, someone aware of suffering, capable of generosity, and deeply committed to repairing emotional wounds. Family, for Jim, became both inspiration and grounding. It offered meaning beyond fame, reminding him that even in the brightest spotlight, real connections are what sustain the human spirit. Alongside art and family, spirituality reshaped Carrey's life. Meditation and mindfulness practices became daily rituals, helping him navigate the turbulence of fame and mental health struggles. Jim's philosophy emphasizes surrender over control. By letting go of ego and attachment to material success, he found inner peace, a radical shift from the hyper-driven performer the world once knew. His work now carries a quiet wisdom, blending humor with insight, absurdity with reflection. This spiritual awakening influenced how he chose roles, how he interacted with fans, and how he approached life off-screen. It gave him resilience, clarity, and a renewed sense of purpose beyond applause and commercial success. Loss has been a recurring theme in Jim's life. From his father's struggles and death to the overdose of former partner Catriona White, heartbreak has left indelible marks. These experiences, though painful, fueled his empathy. They taught him that vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength. Jim's openness about grief, emotional pain, and failed relationships has allowed audiences to connect with him on a deeply human level. His story reminds us that fame and talent do not shield anyone from life's challenges, they only amplify the need for inner resilience. Ultimately, Jim Carrey's legacy is not just measured in box office numbers or awards. It lies in the power of laughter, crafted from a life of struggle, resilience, and emotional depth. His comedy demonstrates that humor is more than entertainment, it is a tool for survival, a bridge between human hearts, and a medium for truth. Characters like Ace Ventura, the Riddler, and Truman Burbank became cultural icons because they carried fragments of Jim's inner life, raw and unfiltered. The juxtaposition of private pain and public joy makes his work timeless. Fans may remember the laughter, but understanding the hidden struggles behind it deepens appreciation and empathy for the man himself. Carrey's openness has also turned him into an advocate for mental health awareness. By sharing his story, his use of medication, his therapy sessions, and his emotional journey, he helps dismantle stigma surrounding mental illness. He encourages others to confront their struggles, to embrace vulnerability, and to find healthy ways to express emotion. Through public interviews, personal art, and philanthropic efforts, Jim Carrey has transformed pain into purpose, showing that recovery and growth are possible even after decades of struggle. Jim Carrey's life is a testament to resilience. Behind the laughter, the wild energy, and the unforgettable performances is a man who has faced despair, loss, addiction, and emotional turmoil, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Even the brightest lights need space to heal. Carrey's journey reveals that humor and hardship often intertwine, shaping a deeper, more resilient self. His story is a reminder that strength is not just about enduring pain silently, it's about confronting it honestly, creatively, and with courage. Through comedy, art, spirituality, and family, Jim Carrey continues to inspire, not just as a performer, but as a human being who understands that laughter and vulnerability are inseparable. Jim Carrey's comedy evolved over decades, not just in style, but in purpose. From physical slapstick and exaggerated expressions to psychologically complex roles, he constantly reinvented himself. Early performances were survival mechanisms, but as he matured, comedy became a medium for exploring human nature. Characters like Truman Burbank or Andy Kaufman weren't just funny, they reflected existential questions about reality, identity, and truth. Carrey's evolution shows a man using art to understand life, blurring the line between performer and philosopher. Even his most absurd performances carried subtext. Audiences laughed at his antics, but beneath the surface was a layered commentary on vulnerability, absurdity, and the human condition. Fame brought both opportunity and isolation. The public saw a larger-than-life figure, yet Jim often felt disconnected from himself. He described living behind masks, performing not just for the audience but to survive the scrutiny of Hollywood. This tension shaped his choices. He took risks in both comedy and drama, seeking roles that challenged him and reflected his inner complexity. Fame amplified his struggles but also provided a platform to explore deeper truths. Balancing identity with public expectation became a lifelong task, one that required self-awareness, humor, and the courage to reveal vulnerability. Jim Carrey's impact on comedy is immeasurable. His fearless improvisation, physicality, and emotional intensity reshaped what audiences expect from comedic performances. He inspired a generation of comedians, actors, and performers to embrace authenticity and risk-taking. His work demonstrates that comedy isn't just entertainment, it's art, a lens to understand human emotion, and a way to connect with audiences on a deeply personal level. Even the raw, chaotic energy that defined his early career became a blueprint for performers worldwide. Through his struggles, Jim taught the world that humor and pain can coexist, often producing the most profound art. One of Jim Carrey's most powerful contributions is his openness about vulnerability. Sharing struggles with depression, substance use, and personal loss has encouraged conversations about mental health that few celebrities dared to start. Jim's journey teaches that true strength isn't hiding pain, it's facing it. Vulnerability allows connection, empathy, and growth. His life reminds us that even the funniest, most energetic people may carry unseen battles, and understanding that complexity deepens appreciation and compassion. Beyond films, fame, and accolades, Jim Carrey's life offers lessons about resilience, authenticity, and self-discovery. He reminds us that wealth and fame don't guarantee happiness, they can even intensify internal struggles. His commitment to art, family, and spiritual exploration demonstrates that fulfillment comes from embracing one's journey fully, including the pain, mistakes, and setbacks. Through laughter, introspection, and creativity, Carrey has crafted a life that balances purpose with joy. Jim Carrey's story illustrates the power of imperfection. Every mistake, breakdown, and misstep shaped the performer he became. The chaos of his personal life, the mental health struggles, and the moments of failure were not hindrances, they were the foundation of his creativity. He has shown audiences that embracing flaws, vulnerability, and humanity is essential for personal growth. Carrey's art thrives because it reflects real life, messy, painful, and occasionally hilarious. Jim Carrey's genius lies in the intersection of comedy and pain. The elasticity of his expressions, the energy of his performances, and the absurdity of his characters were born not just from talent, but from lived experience. The humor he shared with the world was inseparable from his personal suffering. Every laugh carried echoes of hardship, anxiety, and resilience. This delicate balance transformed his work into something enduring, relatable, and deeply human. Today, Jim Carrey's legacy isn't measured solely by box office success or awards. It's measured by the courage to live authentically, to confront inner darkness, and to transform pain into connection. He leaves behind a blueprint for performers, artists, and audiences alike, that laughter and vulnerability are not opposites, they are partners in understanding life. Carrey's story teaches that the pursuit of purpose, rather than perfection, creates the most meaningful legacy. Beyond his own performances, Jim Carrey has become a source of inspiration for aspiring comedians and artists. He openly shares lessons from his struggles, teaching that creativity often emerges from adversity. Whether speaking in interviews, giving advice at panels, or mentoring young performers, Carrey emphasizes authenticity, emotional honesty, and courage. He encourages artists to embrace vulnerability, to take risks, and to allow personal experience to fuel their work. Through mentorship, he extends the lessons learned from decades of hardship, turning pain into guidance, and humor into teaching tools for a new generation. A defining element of Jim's later life is his philosophy of surrender. Years in Hollywood taught him that control is an illusion. Fame, money, and accolades cannot shield anyone from inner struggle. Through meditation and spiritual practice, Carrey learned to let go of ego and expectations. This shift allowed him to experience life fully, without constant judgment or pressure. He discovered that happiness doesn't come from external validation, it comes from acceptance, presence, and inner peace. This philosophy shaped not only his personal life but also his approach to creativity, allowing him to explore more profound, authentic roles. Jim Carrey's life demonstrates that humor can heal. Laughter is more than entertainment, it's a mechanism for survival, a way to process grief, fear, and anxiety. From childhood struggles to adult crises, comedy allowed Carrey to navigate pain, connect with others, and find meaning in chaos. His performances, though wild and exaggerated, carry an emotional truth that resonates universally. This is why his legacy endures. Audiences don't just laugh, they empathize. Every exaggerated expression, every improvised line, reflects resilience, courage, and the human capacity to transform suffering into joy. Jim Carrey's reflections on life include an acute awareness of mortality. Personal tragedies, near-death experiences, and the deaths of loved ones have shaped his understanding of time, purpose, and the human condition. These experiences reinforced his commitment to live authentically, to love deeply, and to embrace vulnerability. Carrey often speaks of life as fleeting, urging audiences to focus on what truly matters: connection, creativity, and compassion. This awareness infuses both his art and public persona with a unique depth, bridging humor with profound existential insight. While Jim Carrey's career is filled with box office hits and iconic roles, he has redefined what success means on his own terms. Money and fame are no longer the ultimate goal, they are secondary to purpose, self-expression, and personal growth. Through painting, spiritual exploration, family, and advocacy, Carrey has crafted a life that values emotional fulfillment over public accolades. His journey reminds us that true success is measured not by wealth or recognition, but by the courage to face oneself honestly and to use creativity for personal and collective growth. Jim Carrey's life is defined by contrasts: laughter and pain, fame and isolation, absurdity and depth. These contradictions are the essence of his genius. He teaches us that life is rarely simple or predictable. Hardship and joy coexist, and embracing both allows for growth, empathy, and artistic authenticity. Carrey's ability to transform adversity into comedy, and struggle into insight, offers a model for resilience that goes beyond Hollywood. Through these lessons, audiences learn that vulnerability is a strength, and that creativity and authenticity can emerge from even the darkest experiences. At the heart of Jim Carrey's story is a man who has faced extraordinary challenges, endured immense suffering, and yet continues to find joy and meaning in life. Behind the iconic characters and legendary laughter is someone profoundly human, vulnerable, reflective, and endlessly evolving. He reminds us that every smile carries a story, every laugh a struggle, and that the journey toward understanding oneself is lifelong. Jim Carrey's life is not just a tale of comedy or fame, it is a testament to resilience, creativity, and the power of embracing life in all its complexity. Even after decades in Hollywood, Jim Carrey never stopped evolving. He refused to remain confined to the image of a manic comedian, instead pushing himself toward roles that challenged both his mind and his emotions. Films like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind showcased his ability to blend humor with heartbreak, improvisation with profound introspection. Carrey embraced characters that reflected the complexity of the human condition, demonstrating that growth and reinvention are possible at any stage of life. This ongoing creative evolution shows that true artistry is never static. It requires risk, self-reflection, and the courage to explore uncharted emotional territory. Jim Carrey's work resonates far beyond Hollywood. Audiences worldwide connect not just to his humor, but to the humanity behind it. The struggles he faced, depression, poverty, personal loss, are universal experiences, and his openness creates empathy across cultures. Through interviews, social media, and public appearances, Carrey inspires millions to confront their fears, pursue creative expression, and embrace vulnerability. His global influence isn't measured by box office numbers alone, it's reflected in the countless fans who see themselves in his story and draw courage from his resilience. Jim Carrey has proven that comedy is universal. His physical humor, facial expressions, and improvisational brilliance transcend language and cultural barriers. Audiences around the world laugh at the same antics, finding connection without words. Yet behind the laughter lies a deeper truth: comedy can also illuminate the human experience. Carrey's work reminds us that even in hardship, humor can provide perspective, healing, and hope. It is this ability to merge laughter with emotion that cements his legacy as one of the most impactful performers in cinematic history. Fame comes with intense scrutiny, and Jim Carrey has faced it all: criticism of his roles, public judgment of his personal life, and constant pressure to perform. For a man who battled anxiety and depression, this scrutiny was often overwhelming. Yet Carrey learned to navigate the pressures with honesty and humor. He confronted rumors, defended his creative choices, and gradually shifted the narrative by openly discussing his mental health. By doing so, he reclaimed control over his story, showing that transparency can transform public scrutiny into empowerment. Away from Hollywood, Jim Carrey has cultivated a rich inner life. Spirituality, meditation, art, and philanthropy have become central to his identity. These pursuits provide balance, allowing him to step outside the relentless pace of fame and reconnect with what truly matters. In interviews, he reflects on how material success pales in comparison to emotional fulfillment. This perspective is a key lesson. The brightest lights may appear invincible, but true strength comes from nurturing the soul, not just the public image. Jim Carrey's journey demonstrates that resilience is at the heart of success. From a childhood of poverty and instability to the pressures of Hollywood stardom, he faced obstacles that could have derailed his path at any stage. Yet, each challenge became fuel for growth. Resilience allowed him to transform personal pain into art, to endure setbacks without losing his creative spark, and to continue pursuing meaningful work. Carrey's story reminds us that success is not about avoiding hardship, it's about navigating it with courage, humor, and determination. Jim Carrey's story inspires not only fans but also future artists. His openness about struggle, vulnerability, and creative risk-taking provides a blueprint for aspiring performers. He encourages young comedians and actors to embrace authenticity, to experiment fearlessly, and to use personal experience as a source of creativity. Carrey's influence extends beyond film. It shapes how new generations approach art, life, and self-expression. Carrey's legacy is more than laughter, it is the intersection of art and healing. His performances, paintings, and public reflections demonstrate how creativity can process trauma, foster empathy, and leave a lasting impact on the world. He reminds us that true legacy is not measured by awards or fame, it is measured by the lives touched, the conversations sparked, and the courage inspired in others. Through humor, vulnerability, and self-expression, Jim Carrey has created a profound and enduring mark on culture.